Well, friends, it's another week. It's another episode of the Cod Pod, a little show we like to call Create or Die. And this is your host, Ike Allred. Now today, we've got another good one, believe it or not. So buckle up. All right, well, things are happening, let me tell you. With Create or Die, the podcast, the brand, the empire, we've got some good things coming. One of those good things, I don't know if I've mentioned it on this show or not, is the official Create or Die truck, okay? It's going to be fully wrapped, branded, Create or Die truck. So if you're in Utah, especially Utah County, be prepared. That thing's going to be driving up and down the streets. Going to be handing out creativity smiles wherever we go. Get you some of that. That's all I can say. Okay? But seriously, it's exciting. People are reaching out. They want to be on the show. They like what it is we're putting down. They align with our mission, which we need to do a better job at articulating, but essentially it's to help inspire creatives and help mitigate against imposter syndrome, which is real. We all have it, and it's not creatives, but it, seems to cut a little more sharply in this creative realm than in others because, it's personal. We're taking what we do, a piece of our heart, we're ripping it out, we're serving it up on a platter, throwing it up against the wall, seeing if it sticks. And it's vulnerable. Okay? So I could obviously go on about that, and I have in the past, but we've got a good episode that I promised to talk to all y'all about, right? I mean, we've got us a sweet guest, and this guest, let me tell you, he's no stranger to the world of design in all of its different forms, from print to web. He's done it all. You might call him the 007 of design. He likes his creative cocktail shaken, not stirred. Yes, I'm talking about none other than Mr. Stevenson, Mark Stevenson. Mark has an extensive career working both at agencies and in-house at some of the best brands along these slopes made of silicon. As a creative leader, Mark is diligent at attending to the needs of his team while inspiring all around him with his ability to breathe new life into any project that crosses his path. I'm honored to introduce my friend and colleague, the man with a license to kill bad design, Mark the Man Stevenson. All right. So, Mark, finally we've got you on the program. I appreciate you agreeing to join us.
Thanks, Ike. Yeah, it's been a while, man. I apologize for the delay. I know there's been a few times where we were trying to get together and on board and things get happening in our daily lives. And it's just been a hot minute, but I'm glad that, very fortunate and excited to talk with you today. So.
Yeah, no, totally understood. It's a busy time for both of us, both professionally and personally, and we're rolling with it for sure. Obviously we've been working together for going on 4 years, and had several chats. I've learned pieces here and there about you and what it is you like to do for a creative outlet. I know you're an amazing designer, and you show that to us at work every day, but tell me a little bit more about how you create in general.
Sure. Yeah, I'd love to. So I'm going to kind of age myself, I think, here. I've got a few years under my belt, and I'd say that with my years of experience, I've been extremely fortunate to have had like opportunities and like working and being inspired from amazing creatives like yourself, Ike, to work and refine my craft in print and layout design, brand identification, logo development.
Hey, sorry about this quick interruption. I want to try something. Wherever you're listening to or watching this, YouTube, whatever, go to the comments, leave a quick comment. Nothing fancy, just where you're listening to this from. You're listening to it from the office, from Utah, from California, from England, wherever, just drop it in the comments. And what's going to happen, that's going to help the engagement, and more people will get a chance to see or hear this podcast. Appreciate it. And if you haven't done it already, hit that subscribe button and give us a like. It helps a lot. Really appreciate it.
Web and then like mobile design these days. And so I guess if I had to choose today where I feel like my strongest skills and experience lie, I would probably say like visual brand strategy, like identity and design, and then with a solid runner-up in probably UI. I know that's a lot, but again, I feel so fortunate throughout my career to have worked with so many companies and have done so many different things and met so many great people. So
yeah, that's awesome. And and you're one of those that I love working with, where you have some specialties, but it's kind of like that T-shaped specialty, where you've got that kind of foundation in design, but you're able to apply that to UI, web design, and print design, and like you said, I'm sure experience and working with other creatives over the years has helped sharpen those different skills. But let's go back even further. Where did you get that original love for creating?
Yeah, no, this is a great question. So, and I've got kind of a fun answer, and I don't know if I've ever shared this with you, but my family, particularly my mom and I, over my whole career, my mom had a story that she shared with me, and it was basically, so I had my mom's mom, my grandmother. She passed away before I was born with pneumonia. And apparently, my mom told me this story that when she was young, that her mom would always, like, for lunches, she'd make my mom's and my aunt's lunches and put them in these paper bags, and before school, but in doing so, every morning she would actually draw an illustration or some sort of like crazy picture on their lunch bags. Specifically my mom, and to the point of where it drew a lot of attention at school. Like, there were teachers and friends of my mom's that were always like so excited to see what my grandmother had drawn on their lunch bags.
Yeah.
So I thought that was really interesting, and we talk about it to this day. Like I said, that I think I get a lot of that passing of maybe the creative my grandmother had.
Yeah.
Was given to me as a gift, and a little of her creative soul that I think resides in me. And so that's kind of, could be speculating, but I think that's one maybe thing that we wonder if that's why I was so driven to art and design.
Sure. Did your mom do any of that type of stuff for you, like drawing your lunch bags?
No, she didn't. Okay,
wow.
Yeah, we've tried to like see if there was. She'd never found the bags, but she said that there were times where she would actually bring home the lunch bags and like hide them under her bed. Because she was trying to make this collection of them, and she had them, but over years she never knew where they went. And so I would have loved to have seen these, but my mom's like, yeah, she would do like these really cool little illustrations of like a sunset or a sun in the morning. My mom's like, it's would be from like either like a strong illustration or a real simplistic like sketch.
Yeah.
So I don't know, it's things like that make you wonder, if those kind of things pass on.
Sure. No, I believe so. And so when you heard those stories like in your youth, did that inspire you to draw yourself then? Is that where it started with drawing?
It did. And this kind of leads me to my next thing is like, I had always drew because obviously before the computers, it was like hand drawing. And when I got into high school, I was on the yearbook committee.
Cool.
And I participated in that. And that's where I think the design advertising part kind of came into play, as well as I was really into taking art classes, and I won some like first and second place art shows with some of the work I had done then. So high school was a big point in my early years where that's what kind of gave me that foundation, that idea of like, hey, this is really what I want to do and proceed and get into. So
that's great. Yeah. So yearbook committee doing layout, and that's a great segue obviously into design, graphic design.
yeah.
So I remember I wasn't on the yearbook committee, but I got the chance to design my senior year cover of the yearbook. Like they came to the art students, and and I remember at the time they were using Quark Express for layout, and that was pretty daunting to me. I didn't want anything to do with that.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so next steps. You out of high school, you had some success there. You knew that you wanted to pursue this, and what did you do after that? You go to school, get a job?
I did. Yeah. So I'll kind of back up and just go slowly through, I guess, my career. So I was working in a retail grocery store for like 10 years in their produce department. And in doing so, I was actually hand drawing a lot of like retail signs for fruit and stuff, and got some attention there from corporate visitors for the company. They would come in and do these like monthly like store checks and stuff, and saw my talents. And one guy said, "Hey, who's doing these signs by hand?" And my manager told him, and one thing led to another. I built some relationship with them and was able to, after I had finished, I was going to college, doing an associate's degree in design at the time and working. And then as soon as I graduated from that, actually got an offer to work in the division office of this company, doing advertising and design and newspaper design and in-store signage and you name it. So that's what really kind of launched me into my first professional opportunity. And that's when, about the time like we were doing all typesetting, and that's when we got computers. So we had like a Power Mac that has been just came into play there, and so that was all new. And that's kind of where I really started learning the computer and the layout skills digitally. So
That's cool. I never heard that story. So it's kind of rags to riches a little bit. You're not doing a design job. You're in there working with the fruit, and you decide to use your creative talents, and it gets noticed by the right people, and you get invited to work at corporate or whatever. I love it. That's super cool.
Yeah.
And so you graduated, you got your associates. That gave you this opportunity gave you a taste for computers and graphic design of the future. And then what were the next steps after that?
Yeah. So I actually, during that time, it was a busy part of my life. So I actually had the opportunity to do some internships locally at a couple of ad agencies. And that was a really good eye opener, diving deep with, professional creatives in these studios doing. I might have told you this story. And I won't share names of the companies, but like where one of their main clients was MGM, and so we were I was asked to help like build these brand boards and stuff for these movies coming out they were working on. So all the brand work for like, let's say like Casper, the movie, and Dragonheart. So it's kind of dating me again, knowing some of these shows, but it was extremely fun to like the substrates and things, and picking out like clothing materials and metal shapes and things, and just bringing all this to the table and prepping these boards for these board meetings with these executives that were coming in. So I think those internships served me well, and those and knowing people in those what kind of launched me into my next part of my career in other companies. Just kind of working. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, with that experience working on that movie stuff, MGM and Casper and different things, were those like pitches for work? And if so, did you guys land that? And was it web? Was it print? I'm curious what you ended up doing.
Yeah. So we had actually landed the job. We were like a sole partner for MGM, this agency I work for, and so we had already had the job. There were certain sectors that were like, okay, we want to see like clothing design for the movie. What would those look like? There was like wood cutting. So I was working with a guy, I can't remember his name, but he was actually like physically like cutting out like these really cool like dragon shapes in wood, and presenting those for like handles of like knives and things, and then like jewelry, like we had like tons of stuff brought in, different like antique jewelry pieces, and building like necklaces and stuff. And so it's really cool to get in there and work with people on that.
That's super cool. And then like you mentioned, working in Silicon Slopes, in different studios in-house and agency work, and throughout that, you've talked a little bit about your skill sets, the different types of design you do from web to print. But stepping back from all of that, do you have a favorite part of the just creative process, agnostic of what the actual area is in?
Yeah. So there are several things, I would say, obviously team collaboration, the brainstorming, the exploration, the discovery of a project, all those initial things coming together. I love working with teams and coming up with ideas. I feel like I'm always striving to think outside the box, creating and solving something that's never been created, if the opportunity and the time is allowed. Like delivering a creative, strategic solution that meets customers' priorities and needs, and seeing that outcome and that successful outcome on things. And so, I would say more than anything, it's just the brainstorming collaboration with people. So
kind of the beginning stages, and then also it's nice to see the end and kind of how it was received by the client, and did it really solve the problems that they were looking to solve. And that is something that's really tricky as a creative. I imagine you've seen this as well. I know we've struggled, in our current positions to kind of find metrics or way to measure what it is we do and how it impacts the final product. What are your thoughts on that? Have you been able to crack that nut, or have you had places you've worked at in the past where you feel like they had a better handle on how to really quantify what it is that we bring as far as value from a creative standpoint?
Yeah, no, it's tough, and I think it's. I haven't seen that yet, where data is what drives that process. I think it's pretty much like where we're at now with MX. I mean, I think we do a great job at with our process and such there, but it's been across the board, to be honest with you, if I think about it. Yeah.
Well, that's good to hear. That's all. I ask people every once in a while. Sure. Maybe there's something I missed along the way, and
No.
but yeah, it does seem to be universal, and I think what goes along with that a little bit is something I like to ask people about on this program is with regards to like doubt and imposter syndrome, and
Yeah.
I mean, you've got a few years more experience than me, and so have you reached that point where you're no longer experiencing imposter syndrome, or is it something you still run into?
Yeah, now and then, I would
Yeah,
say.
yeah,
I would definitely, and I think that goes for everybody people I've known, anybody I've ever talked to in my career. I think it happens.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And it sounds like you say now and then, so it probably doesn't happen as often.
Oh,
Did it happen more earlier on in your career?
it did.
Yeah.
It did.
Okay, so there's hope for people out there
Sure
that
is.
maybe it's not always going to be like this. You've seen this rodeo before. You
Yes.
know what it looks like on the other side, and that gives you confidence and the ability to maybe convey confidence in
Hmm.
stakeholders and clients.
Absolutely.
Oh, that's great. And speaking of the youth, the next generation of designers or creatives out there,
Yeah.
what kind of feedback, or not feedback, what kind of advice would you give them or yourself if you were to go back 20 years and say, hey, this will help you out?
Yeah, obviously, I think it's you always kind of hear it, but and they're the general things like networking. I found, especially in my younger years, that became huge for me. Again, like when you work for somebody and you work with a team and they move on, then they always keep you in mind. So,
Yeah.
and whether it's working with teammates that move on that you stay in contact with, I think there's local foundations out there, like becoming a member of like the local AIGA, chapters. Um, I've been a member with that before, and went to all the luncheons and activities that they hold that are really great. Met a lot of great people there, and always looking for inspiration as well. I think as creatives, obviously, we're kind of taught that, especially in school. What I like to do and have done is, as well as like for inspiration, is like attend conferences out of state. Like you got the Adobe Max conferences. You've got, I've got probably 20 years. This is going to sound crazy.
Yeah.
Communication arts, hard copy books in my
Magazine.
office that I've got a library of. So,
Awesome.
subscriptions of things, things you can refer back to when you have time and just, glance back.
Yeah.
And then, you got online resources like Behance and Dribbble and such that I'm constantly, looking towards and looking at, Pinterest and such. So, I think, again, it's a lot of people out there probably know these, but I'm a true believer in a lot of that. That's brought a lot of success to me.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, no, I'll touch on the networking thing in a moment. I think that's great, but to kind of hit on that last point about inspiration, it's kind of like, garbage in, garbage out. So like,
Right.
or vice versa, if you're pulling in amazing work and consuming that and looking at it,
Hmm.
critically, like what is it that's good about this? How, and that's going to help sharpen your work. I remember being worried initially, like working at a studio. I don't want people to see that I'm looking at other inspiration. Like they might think I'm trying to copy it or whatever.
Uh-huh.
But it's everyone does it, and it's the right solution, right? Am I?
It is. It is.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
like a couple other things that from a personal thing that I do, it's kind of fun to share is, I've always been a big fan of like what the design communities are doing over in Europe.
Oh yeah.
And to this day, I'm always over looking on like agency sites and different different sites that are over in that side of the world. I think there's a lot of inspiration and great like design that comes out of there that you never see here in, on our site. So to me, that's a big, piece of advice maybe to, good, really cool stuff out there. And Ike, this, I'm a big automotive, like car guru. And, I think over the years with technology, with computers and stuff, the things like that are being generated and created in car design these days, I look at, the interiors and like the light diodes in a light of a car. Like there's so much like different patterns and colors that are being used in a lot of environmental design, I guess you could say as well. For me, I don't know why that works, but I'll go to a car manufacturer's site and dive deep into like their libraries of stuff and their concepts and things. And it's kind of strange, but I get a lot of satisfaction and a lot of like ideas to kind of jump off of from them doing stuff. So yeah.
No, that's great. And I remember a couple years back, it was maybe one of your first web projects you did for us at MX, where it was something about a BMW experience or something like that, and that's a piece that I think you surprised all of us on, because it was like, wow, this really captured the essence of BMW and those kind of motorhead crowd, and makes sense that that's one of your passions, and you look at that stuff for inspiration.
Yeah,
that's cool. So just to kind of close out the loop on what you shared there about networking, couldn't agree more. It's great to keep in touch with those that move on, or I think that's one of the best things about secondary education, school, college, is you rub shoulders with students that may go on to do cool things, as well as a lot of the professors or maybe adjunct professors who working in the industry, and those can really help you get that first start. And so that's great advice, and a good reminder that there are other ways to network. Go to those AIGA events and conferences.
Yeah.
And so, speaking of networking, let's say somebody listens to this and they're like, yeah, that Mark guy, he's got it figured out. I'd love to pick his brain. What's the best way to get in touch with you? You have a social media platform that you're most kind of frequent?
Yeah, I would say, the basics, either, LinkedIn, you can look at my profile there, Mark Stevenson, or just an email, directly to me. I think those are the two best I can think of. So.
Okay, great. Do you have, is your email address on LinkedIn, or is that something you want to share here? Or?
I can share it here. I do have it on there. It's Mark, M-A-R-K, 777. Lucky number 7. Yeah. Stevenson, STEVENSON @gmail.com.
Awesome, great. And I'll put that up there in text. But Cool. This has been awesome, Mark. I'm glad we were able to finally find some time to record this episode, and I think you've given me and our listeners some great things to think about and inspire us to be better at finding inspiration in what we do and continuing to network. Kind of my takeaways. Yeah.
Absolutely. No, it's been awesome. I really appreciate the time, and this is great. Very honored.
Awesome. Thank you, Mark. Once again, I'd like to say thanks to my boy Mark for being on the program. Really enjoyed it, and man, what great reminders about things that we all should be doing with regards to networking or being inspired by others' work, people that we know or people that we don't, people that we follow on Instagram or find their stuff on Pinterest or Behance or ArtStation. Wherever it is, get inspired. And I'm not talking about copying, you get you 10, 20 different sources and let it percolate in your mind, and then just throw something on the canvas or the Figma board or on the guitar. However it is that you create, I guarantee it, if you lean on inspiration, you're going to be glad you did. I know you've been telling your friends, I know you've been telling your family. I appreciate it. The word's getting out there. Just keep on doing it. If you're listening to this at work, take your headphones off, look to the person to your right, and say, get you some Create or Die podcast. Just get you some of that. If there isn't a person to your right, or you're feeling extra generous, you go ahead and turn yourself to the left and do the same. It's that easy. Until next time, my friends, keep on creating. Create or die.